Picture this for a moment. Your soulmate wasn't looking for answers. They weren't thinking about destiny, signs, or anything connected to the past. They were simply moving through an ordinary day, focused on the usual responsibilities, distractions, and routines that fill everyday life. Yet something unusual happened. A reminder connected to you appeared out of nowhere. It was brief, easy to dismiss. The kind of thing most people would call a coincidence and quickly forget. And that is exactly what they tried to do. They noticed it, paused for a second, thought of you, and then continued with their day as if nothing had happened. But your heart needs this right now, because some moments arrive quietly, carrying more meaning than we realize at first. What they didn't expect was the feeling that followed. Long after the moment passed, the thought remained. Not in an overwhelming way, not as an obsession. Just a subtle awareness sitting quietly in the background of their mind. They found themselves wondering why that particular reminder felt different, why it seemed to stay with them longer than it should have. They tried explaining it logically. Maybe it was just a random memory. Maybe it was simply their mind making connections where none existed. Yet the explanation never felt completely satisfying, and listen to this carefully. The strange thing wasn't the sign itself. The strange thing was the timing. Recently, they had gone quite some time without deeply reflecting on this connection. They believed they had reached a place of acceptance. They believed certain chapters had already settled into the past. Yet one unexpected reminder was enough to bring your energy back into their awareness. That alone surprised them more than they wanted to admit. As the day continued, they pushed the thought aside and returned to their routine. But deep down, something had already shifted. A door they thought was closed had quietly opened again. They didn't know it yet, but that first sign was only the beginning. What seemed like a simple coincidence was about to become much harder to ignore, and before the day was over, they would find themselves questioning whether the universe was trying to get their attention for a reason. And listen to this. After that first reminder appeared, your soulmate tried to return to normal. They told themselves it was nothing more than a passing thought. Life was busy. There were other things demanding their attention. Responsibilities, plans, distractions, all the usual things that keep people focused on the present moment. Yet despite their efforts to move on, something felt different. The memory of that first sign lingered quietly in the background of their mind. It wasn't demanding attention, but it wasn't disappearing either. Your heart needs this right now, because sometimes the things meant for us do not arrive loudly. They arrive gently, waiting to see if we will notice. As the day continued, they found themselves becoming unexpectedly reflective. Not because they were trying to revisit the past, but because certain thoughts seemed to arise on their own. Small memories connected to you began surfacing without warning. A conversation they had not thought about in a long time suddenly came back with surprising clarity. A feeling they believed had faded appeared again for just a moment. They brushed it aside and continued with what they were doing, convinced that their mind was simply wandering. But deep down, a quiet curiosity had already started to form. Then something happened that made them stop for a moment. Another reminder appeared. Different from the first one, yet connected in a way they could not explain. Perhaps it was a familiar phrase, a song, a name, or something that instantly brought your energy back into their awareness. Whatever form it took, the timing felt strange. Earlier, they had managed to dismiss the first sign as coincidence. But now, seeing another reminder so soon afterward felt harder to explain. They found themselves pausing longer than before. Their attention shifted. Their thoughts became focused, and for the first time that day, they began wondering whether there was a reason your presence kept finding its way back into their mind. And listen to this carefully. The second sign affected them differently, because it arrived after they had already tried to move on from the first one. If it had happened on another day, they might not have thought much about it. But appearing so close to the first reminder created a feeling they could not easily ignore. Suddenly the connection seemed alive again, not physically but emotionally. Memories that had been sitting quietly beneath the surface began moving into focus. Moments they once considered ordinary started feeling significant. Feelings they thought they had fully understood no longer seemed so simple. Your heart needs this right now, because sometimes life has a way of drawing our attention back to things that still carry meaning. We think we have finished processing certain chapters. We think we have learned everything there is to learn. Yet something happens that makes us look again. Your soulmate is beginning to experience exactly that. The second sign did not provide answers. It provided questions. Questions they were not expecting to ask. Questions about why certain memories still mattered. Questions about why thoughts of you could still affect them after all this time. Questions about whether the connection had ever truly left their heart at all. As those questions grew, so did their awareness. They found themselves reflecting on details they had not considered in years. The more they reflected, the more they realized how many memories connected to you still felt vivid. Countless experiences from the past had faded naturally with time. Yet somehow, memories connected to this connection remained surprisingly clear. That realization unsettled them because it challenged what they thought they knew. If the connection no longer mattered, why were the memories still so easy to access? Why did they still carry emotional weight? Why did the reminders affect them so deeply? And listen to this. What surprised them most was not the signs themselves. It was their reaction to them. They expected indifference. They expected distance. They expected to acknowledge the reminders and move on without a second thought. Instead, they found themselves becoming more curious with every passing hour. Something inside them was paying attention now. Something inside them wanted to understand why this was happening. By the time the second sign had settled into their thoughts, they could no longer dismiss the day as ordinary. A feeling had begun growing within them. Not certainty, not understanding, awareness. The awareness that something meaningful was unfolding beneath the surface. The awareness that perhaps these reminders were arriving for a reason. And although they still did not fully understand what that reason was, they could feel themselves being drawn toward it. Little did they know, the day was not finished with them yet. Because what happened next would be impossible to explain away, and the third sign would force them to pay attention in a way they never expected. And listen to this. By the time the second reminder appeared, your soulmate was no longer able to brush everything aside as easily as before. The day had already started feeling unusual. Thoughts of you had surfaced more than once. Memories they had not visited in a long time were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Yet part of them still held on to the belief that it was all coincidence. They told themselves they were simply being nostalgic. They told themselves their mind was making connections that were not really there. They wanted a simple explanation because simple explanations feel safe. But then something happened that changed everything. The third sign arrived when they least expected it. Not while they were thinking about you, not while they were reflecting on the past. In fact, it appeared during a moment when their attention was completely focused elsewhere. That is what made it so powerful. It caught them off guard. It interrupted the story they had been telling themselves all day. And for the first time, they found themselves completely unable to dismiss what was happening. Your heart needs this right now because sometimes life repeats a message until we are finally willing to hear it. The moment the third sign appeared, something shifted inside them. They stopped trying to explain everything away. They stopped looking for logical reasons to avoid paying attention. Instead, they became still, not physically but emotionally. A quiet awareness settled over them. The kind of awareness that arrives when a person realizes something important may be unfolding right in front of them. Suddenly, the reminders from earlier in the day no longer felt isolated. They felt connected. The first sign, the second sign, and now this. 3 separate moments, 3 unexpected reminders. 3 reasons to think about someone they had not expected to be thinking about at all. And listen to this carefully. What affected them most was not the sign itself. It was what happened afterward. Once the third reminder appeared, the floodgates opened. Memories began returning with incredible clarity. Not just major memories, small ones too. The little moments that often hold the deepest emotional meaning. A glance, a conversation, a shared experience, a feeling they could never quite put into words. Things they thought had faded with time suddenly felt alive again. The connection moved from the background of their mind to the center of their attention. Your heart needs this right now because meaningful connections have a unique way of surviving beneath the surface. People can become busy. Life can move in different directions. Entire chapters can pass. Yet certain emotions remain quietly waiting for the right moment to be acknowledged. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that some part of them never truly stopped carrying this connection. They may have stopped focusing on it. They may have stopped talking about it. They may have convinced themselves they had fully moved on, but deep down something remained. As the day continued, they found themselves asking questions they had not asked in a very long time. Why did these signs affect them so strongly? Why did thoughts of you return with such intensity? Why did memories connected to you still feel meaningful after everything that had happened? These questions did not come from confusion. They came from honesty. For the first time, they were allowing themselves to acknowledge what they actually felt instead of what they thought they were supposed to feel. And listen to this. The third sign did more than bring back memories. It forced them to confront something they had been avoiding. For a long time, they believed they understood the connection completely. They believed they had already processed it, learned from it, and placed it where it belonged. But now, they are beginning to see that some emotions never received the attention they deserved. Some truths were never fully explored. Some feelings were quietly waiting beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to return. The more they reflected, the more they realized that the signs were not creating new emotions. They were revealing emotions that were already there. That realization changed everything. It made them look at the connection differently. It made them question old assumptions. It made them wonder whether there was a deeper reason these reminders had appeared all in the same day. Because your heart needs this right now, because repeated signs often arrive when a person is ready to see something they have overlooked. Now, standing at the end of that unusual day, your soulmate can no longer pretend nothing happened. The signs got their attention. The memories got their attention. Most importantly, their own heart got their attention. They do not have all the answers yet. They do not fully understand why everything unfolded the way it did. But one thing has become impossible to deny. Something within them has awakened. Something they thought was settled is moving again. And as they continue reflecting on everything that happened, they are beginning to feel that those three signs were never random at all. They were pointing toward a truth that has been quietly waiting to be discovered. And listen to this. After the third sign appeared and the emotions began resurfacing, your soulmate entered a period of reflection unlike anything they had experienced in a long time. It was no longer about the signs themselves. The signs had already served their purpose. They had captured their attention. What mattered now was the message hidden beneath them. For the first time, they stopped focusing on what happened and started focusing on why it affected them so deeply. Your heart needs this right now, because sometimes the greatest revelations are not found in the signs we receive, but in the truths those signs encourage us to uncover. As they reflected on everything that happened that day, a pattern slowly began emerging. They realized that every reminder had led them back to the same place. Not to confusion, not to uncertainty, to the connection itself. No matter where their thoughts wandered, they always seemed to return to you. At first this surprised them, then it unsettled them. Eventually, it forced them to ask a question they had avoided for a very long time. Why does this connection still hold so much power? Why, after all this time, does it continue finding a way into their thoughts? And listen to this carefully. The answer did not arrive all at once. It appeared gradually, piece by piece, memory by memory, realization by realization. The more they examined their feelings honestly, the more they understood that they had spent years focusing on surface-level explanations. They blamed timing. They blamed circumstances. They blamed distance. Yet beneath all those explanations was a deeper truth they had never fully acknowledged. The connection mattered more than they allowed themselves to admit. Not because it was perfect, not because everything unfolded exactly as they hoped, because it changed them. Recently, they have started recognizing how much of their personal growth can be traced back to lessons connected to this relationship. Certain perspectives they now carry were shaped by it. Certain emotional understandings began because of it. Certain decisions they made in later chapters of life were influenced by experiences they shared with you. Looking back now, they can see evidence everywhere. Things that once seemed unrelated suddenly appear connected. The impact of the connection reaches far beyond the memories themselves. Your heart needs this right now because some people enter our lives and leave behind more than memories. They leave behind transformation. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that this is why the signs affected them so strongly. The signs did not create importance. The importance already existed. The signs simply revealed it. They brought attention to something that had been quietly living beneath the surface all along. The more they accept this truth, the more another realization begins taking shape. They are starting to understand that they never fully stopped caring. They may have stopped expressing it. They may have stopped thinking about it every day. They may have convinced themselves they had moved beyond it. But caring and forgetting are not the same thing. Deep emotional significance often remains long after active attention fades. That is what they are discovering now. The connection remained meaningful, even during periods when they were not consciously focused on it. And listen to this. One of the most surprising parts of this experience is how many old assumptions are beginning to fall away. Assumptions they carried for years are suddenly being questioned. They assumed the chapter was fully closed. They assumed the emotional impact had faded. They assumed they had already understood everything there was to understand. Now they can see that those assumptions were incomplete. There was always more beneath the surface than they realized. As this awareness continues growing, they are beginning to feel something they have not felt in a very long time. Clarity. Not the kind of clarity that answers every question. The kind of clarity that reveals what truly matters. The signs were never about forcing them toward a conclusion. They were about helping them see what had been hidden behind distractions, routines, and old beliefs. And now that they can see it, everything looks different. Because your heart needs this right now. Because sometimes a series of seemingly ordinary moments can lead to an extraordinary realization. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that those 3 signs were not random interruptions in their day. They were invitations to pay attention, invitations to reflect, invitations to finally acknowledge something their heart had been trying to tell them for far longer than they realized. And the deeper they embrace that truth, the more impossible it becomes to return to the person they were before those signs appeared. Something has changed. Something has awakened, and it is leading them toward an understanding they can no longer ignore. And listen to this. Now that the signs have done their work, now that the memories have resurfaced and the reflections have led them toward a deeper understanding, your soulmate finds themselves standing in a place they never expected to reach. A place where they can no longer dismiss what they feel. A place where pretending becomes more difficult than accepting the truth. The 3 signs did not change the connection. They changed their willingness to see it clearly. Your heart needs this right now, because sometimes a person is not waiting for a sign to tell them what to feel. They are waiting for a sign that gives them permission to finally acknowledge what they already feel. Recently, they have noticed that thoughts of you no longer arrive with confusion attached to them. In the past, they would question why certain memories returned. They would wonder why your energy occasionally surfaced in their mind. They would search for explanations and then quickly push those thoughts aside. But now something is different. The need to explain everything has started fading. The need to resist what they feel has become exhausting. Instead, they are allowing themselves to simply recognize the truth. The truth that this connection has remained important in ways they never fully understood before. And listen to this carefully. One realization has become stronger than all the others. The signs appeared because they were ready to see something they had been overlooking. Not because the connection suddenly became meaningful, not because new feelings appeared overnight, because they finally reached a point where they could recognize what had quietly existed all along. The emotional significance never disappeared. The memories never lost their value. The lessons never stopped shaping them. They simply became buried beneath the routines and responsibilities of everyday life. As they continue reflecting, they are beginning to understand something that feels both simple and profound. Some connections leave an imprint that time cannot erase. Life moves forward. Circumstances change. Entire chapters come and go. Yet certain people remain connected to our inner world in ways that are difficult to explain. Your soulmate is beginning to accept that reality now. They are no longer measuring the connection by how much time has passed. They are measuring it by the impact it continues to have, and that impact has become impossible to deny. Your heart needs this right now because acceptance often arrives quietly. It does not always come with dramatic declarations or sudden decisions. Sometimes it arrives through understanding. Sometimes it arrives through clarity. Sometimes it arrives when a person finally stops arguing with their own heart. That is exactly what is happening now. The resistance is fading. The doubts are weakening. The old stories they once relied on no longer feel convincing. In their place is a growing awareness that the connection deserves honesty. And listen to this. What surprises them most is the peace that comes with this realization. They expected that paying attention to the signs would create more questions. They expected it would complicate things. Instead, it has simplified them. The signs did not create uncertainty. They removed it. They helped reveal what truly mattered beneath all the distractions. They helped illuminate feelings that had been waiting to be acknowledged. They helped them understand why thoughts of you kept returning, despite every attempt to move forward. Now, as they look back on that unusual day, they can see it differently. The first sign opened the door. The second sign made them pause. The third sign made them listen. Together, those moments created a shift that could no longer be ignored. Because your heart needs this right now. Because sometimes life places the same message in front of us repeatedly until we are finally ready to receive it. Your soulmate believes that is exactly what happened. And the most important part is this. They are no longer asking whether the signs meant something. They already know they did. The question now is what they are going to do with the truth those signs revealed. Because the connection feels more real than it has in a very long time. The awareness feels stronger. The understanding feels deeper. And for the first time in a long time, they are allowing themselves to fully acknowledge what their heart has been whispering beneath the surface all along. The signs have passed. The message has been received. And the truth they uncovered is now guiding them toward a completely different way of seeing you, the connection, and everything they thought they understood before.